Good morning. So we have Antonio Alvarado with us. So first of all, just to break the ice, we have some random questions to give you. Is there anything interesting, not to throw give me one fun fact, but any interesting fact about yourself you want people to know?
Any interesting fact about myself? No. I mean, it's funny because I study insects, but I used to hate insects like my entire life. Was never a fan of them, but now here I am, and I love bugs now. So
Okay. Um, is it true that you have bug tattoos?
I
That's
do.
how much you love them now.
I gotta bring them out. I have lots of fleas, mosquitoes, ticks, bed bugs, lice, centipede. Always looking to add more too. So
Very cool. Do you have tattoo related questions, Sean? You're the one with
I d-
tattoos. I don't have any.
I don't think I do. What's the next one on the horizon?
man, I've thought about this a lot. It's probably going to, so I have to stick with the vector theme. So it has to be a bug that either causes illness or people don't like them really. So I thought about a sandfly or a biting black fly. Those are probably my next two.
So all of the bugs are menaces to society, essentially. They're not, none of them are no, a bumblebee.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Just clarifying. All right, cool. So we'll get right into it unless you have any other random questions to ask.
No, I think we're ready. Antonio, what's your main role at DPH?
So I am the vector-borne disease epidemiologist. I also cover some general diseases as well, but mostly the bug diseases. We basically interview cases, we classify cases based on case definitions, respond to any outbreaks, do outreach, things like that.
And I know you said when we started, you were not originally very fond of bugs, and now this is your specialty with DPH. So, how did you get into this specialty?
Yeah, I was always interested in infectious diseases. When I got to undergrad, I wasn't really sure what group of infectious diseases I wanted to go into. I wasn't sure if I was interested in foodborne diseases or injury epidemiology. Certainly, vector-borne diseases wasn't really on my radar because I didn't like bugs. I had an internship at Columbia University in New York City, my third year in undergrad, and they place you with a mentor, and I was just lucky enough to get placed with the New York City Department of Health in their vector-borne disease program, and I was like, I'm really not going to like this. And turns out I it completely changed my view on everything, which is why you should always have an open mind. My mentor was an entomologist. He knew the craziest bug facts that blew my mind, that some butterflies taste with their feet, just little things like that. And on our lunch breaks, he would go identify bug or butterfly species, and I'd follow him and just I'd learn a lot. And I was always interested in animals too. And I never this is gonna sound weird, but I never put two and two together that bugs are animals. And when you think of animals, you think of the cute fluffy animals or something like that. But I realized that this would be kind of a cool disease group to get into to study both insects and diseases. And it's super complex because a lot of these insects have complex life cycles and a lot of people just don't know a lot about them. So yeah, so I studied that. I went to grad school at Cornell for vector-borne diseases. I had to start. So I was a master's student with undergrad students in entry level entomology courses because I had no background in entomology at all, which is the study of insects. And I started from the bases and kind of worked my way up. And now I have a master's degree in entomology, and I managed a mosquito control program in Pennsylvania. And after that, I am now working here as the vector-borne epi.
Cool.
That's great. Where'd you get your master's from?
Cornell University.
Awesome. So, Antonio, when we were talking about your tattoos earlier, you mentioned that they were all vector. So, would you explain to us in layman's terms what is a vector-borne disease?
Sure. So a vector-borne disease is an illness that is caused by a germ that is spread by another organism, um, like an arthropod, which is an animal with segmented bodies, jointed legs, like an insect. So most commonly, the vectors are blood-sucking arthropods like ticks and mosquitoes, but not always. But that's basically what it is some organism that takes a germ or pathogen from somewhere else and spreads it to another organism.
So it doesn't have to be bugs, but often it is a bug that is the
Yeah,
vector.
yeah, yep. Often it is an insect, but ticks are not insects, they're arachnids. So it could be arachnids. There's schistosomiasis, which is spread by some freshwater snail species. So there are different types of arthropods that can spread some vector-borne diseases.
Well, I actually did not know that ticks were specifically arachnids.
I did
So
not know that
we're
either.
learning a lot today here.
Yes.
Anybody who's exposed to these insects is at risk for these vector-borne diseases if these arthropods are infected with a vector-borne disease. But certainly there are vulnerable populations, and that's those that often have weakened immune systems or are elderly above the age of 65 and can present with some severe complications from them. It's always best to practice prevention, and the best way to prevent vector-borne diseases is to prevent insect bites. So those are basically, using repellents, insect repellents, wearing protective clothing, doing tick checks after a hike, which we can go in deeper, do a deeper dive on all that if you'd like.
Okay. Awesome. It would be great. So I know you mentioned each one of those. So specifically clothing, do you want to start there or lawn care? Kind of go in deeper of the prevention methods for each of those.
Sure. As far as clothing, when it comes to, I guess we could separate it between, so the two most common vector-borne diseases we see in Delaware are mosquito-borne diseases, the general groups, and tick-borne diseases. And as far as clothing for mosquito-borne diseases, you always want to wear long sleeves, long pants. Obviously, that's pretty difficult to do in the summer when these mosquitoes are most active, but and also there are some species that can bite right through clothing, so it's not always effective. Clothing is mostly, I feel like, effective for preventing ticks. So you want to wear light colored clothing. So white colors tend to be best because it's easy to spot ticks on them if they're crawling. Also, if you're wearing long pants, you want to tuck your pants into your socks. So pull your socks over your pants. That way ticks don't crawl under your pants and get in those hard to find areas, I guess, in your legs and areas like that. So there's also repellents like permethrin repellents that you can spray on clothing, and those are pretty effective. Yeah, and as far as lawn care, there's so much you can do to prevent mosquitoes. So mosquitoes need water to complete their life cycle. The baby stage of mosquitoes, the larvae and the pupae, grow in the water and then they emerge from the water as adults. So anywhere that can hold water around your house can breed mosquitoes, which is pretty problematic. And that can be anything from a tarp over a boat or a wheelbarrow that's holding water that you forgot about, or even just like a dog bowl that you have outside that's holding water too can breed mosquitoes. So definitely dumping those. For ticks, there are ways that you can just maintain your yard. So cutting grass, making sure the grass stays short, removing wood piles and invasive shrubs like Japanese barberry and honeysuckle from your yards. You can also, if your yard backs up to a wooded lot or like a forest, you can create a barrier of like 3 to 5 feet of gravel or stone chips or stones between your yard and the forest, and that can deter ticks from crossing the forest into your yard. So that's another way that you can prevent some ticks.
What about for people like myself? I have a ton of very mature, like at least 100-year-old trees in my backyard. Obviously, you can't have a mulch barrier for all of those. Is there anything as far as like anything preventive wise that could be done for people who have trees and shrubbery in their yard already?
Yeah. So trees don't directly, I wouldn't say they directly would attract ticks or mosquitoes, So I wouldn't necessarily worry about that unless it's like a whole forest of trees and there's leaf litter and brush underneath of them. That's where the ticks like to stay. The only time trees really become problematic is for mosquitoes if they have like tree holes that are holding water. And there's a specific species of mosquito called the eastern tree hole mosquito that loves to breed in tree holes. So if that's the case, there's things that you can fill the tree hole with to prevent it from holding water.
So basically just maintaining and not allowing leaves and brush to
Mhm.
pile is the biggest thing there. Cool.
I am so glad that you mentioned that it's difficult to wear long sleeves in the summertime because I see that recommendation and I say it's 95 degrees out. Are you crazy? I'm not wearing long sleeves
Yeah,
and pants outside, and long pants outside.
I know it's always in the recommendations, but it always makes me laugh because it's like who really is doing that? I mean, there are some long sleeve breathable shirts and things like that, but nobody's really going to wear long sleeves and long pants in the summer.
How often do the local towns and cities spray for mosquitoes?
I'm not entirely sure. So Denrec's mosquito control office handles all the spraying and mosquito surveillance. I know they do a lot of response sprays in response to annoyance and just aggressive biting. If people are getting bit a lot, they'll just spray. I don't know how they determine the how much they spray, but they do it regularly to prevent a lot of these nuisance spiders from annoying people, and especially in like the coastal towns where you have all these salt marshes and brackish marshes where these mosquitoes are breeding in.
So we talked a lot about ticks. Are there any mosquito diseases, or we can go back to like Lyme disease prevention and things like that? Any specific diseases that you want to get into as far as these vectors and what those entail, the symptoms and how to spot them?
Sure. So Lyme disease right now is the most common vector-borne disease in Delaware. Last year and the year before, actually, pretty consistently, we see over 300 cases reported annually. It's spread by the black-legged, also known as the deer tick. And, you know, it's all over our state, really. There isn't really one county, every county is reporting Lyme disease cases every year. And there is treatment for it. There's early treatment, there's antibiotics that you can get for it. But a lot of these vector-borne diseases are going to start with like those common flu-like symptoms that are can be difficult to tell with Lyme disease. You can also have that bullseye rash, which not everybody presents with that bullseye rash. I think it's anywhere between 60 to 80% will have it, so not everyone will have it. And also it can present differently based on like your skin color and things like that. So it won't always present as that bullseye too. So there's that symptom. But as far as other tick-borne diseases, we see right now, actually, the second most reportable tick-borne disease is alpha-gal syndrome, which is the tick bite meat allergy, which just became reportable last year in Delaware. It's not nationally reportable, but I think we saw that it's mostly associated with the Lone Star tick, and we kind of figured that it'd be a problem here, and so we wanted to make it reportable so we could start tracking it and asking about symptoms and tick exposure and those sort of questions. So last year, I believe we had over 100 cases reported since it just became reportable in last June. So we were pretty busy working with that, and those symptoms can range from mild mild GI, abdominal pain, anywhere from full blown anaphylactic shock and hives and swelling of your lips. And the weird thing about alpha gal syndrome is that with most allergies, the reaction occurs pretty quickly, but with alpha gal syndrome, it's a delay. So it occurs sort of 2 to 8 hours after you're eating red meat or red meat products, like milk. So you'll have like a big steak at dinner, and then you'll wake up in the middle of the night having this reaction, and you don't even, you're not thinking about that steak dinner at night because that was way before. So it can be difficult to diagnose for sure. But I think our providers here in Delaware are becoming more aware of it, and we are getting pretty consistent lab reports of alpha gal syndrome. Going on to mosquito-borne diseases, West Nile virus is endemic here, which means that it's here every year. It was first identified in the United States in 1999 in New York City, and from 1999 it kind of spread all over rapidly the entire country. So it's here in Delaware every year. It's not super common. Most people, even if they get bitten by an infected mosquito, they're going to show no symptoms. I think it's like 80% of people actually don't show any symptoms, but it's mostly the elderly population that are at greater risk for severe complications. And when it presents severely, it can lead to neuroinvasive disease, which means it can cause inflammation of the brain or meningitis. So it can be pretty serious.
Okay.
Antonio, you had mentioned alpha-gal being a reportable disease. Could you just quickly explain what that means? Because I'm not sure that the general public knows exactly what a reportable disease.
Yeah. So yeah. So reportable diseases are written into, I believe, law in Delaware law that providers and labs, if they receive any positive results, they are required to send it to the Delaware Division of Public Health so we can track cases and interview cases if necessary. And states can choose what's reportable, what's not reportable, and sometimes you add things, sometimes you take things off. I'm not super familiar with the behind the scenes on that, but I know it can be pretty intense to add something to the list. It has to go through like a public hearing phase and all that good stuff.
So essentially, to sum that up, the reportable disease list is a list that's codified by law, and then it'll go to the respective DPH individual that is that epidemiologist, and they'll research from there. Are any of these diseases that we're talking about, so Lyme disease, alpha gal, West Nile that you mentioned, are any of those able to be spread between a family, let's say, once someone does have it?
It's not spread. So these vector-borne diseases, thankfully, cannot be spread person to person directly. There are cases where you can have infected. Let's say someone has, I don't know. Let's just use West Nile virus. I mean, blood banks will screen blood right now for West Nile virus, but let's say like before that, someone donated blood and it was positive for West Nile virus, and then someone got that blood transfusion with that positive blood. That could cause West Nile virus disease in the recipient of the blood. So also there's infected organ donations. You can get some infections that way. So that's probably the most,
Rare to happen because
yeah,
of a
yeah,
test.
yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of the diseases already. We have some flyers here that I know you guys created. What resources for physicians and healthcare providers do you have that you want to maybe plug to help with these reportable diseases?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the poster and the brochure. So those were part of our one of our One Health initiatives and projects where we wanted to create posters and sort of disseminate those to school health or school nurse offices, to medical provider offices, to mobile health clinics all over the state, really. So we have 4 posters. We have the one behind you, which is on where to look for ticks, how to remove ticks. We have one on alpha-gal syndrome, signs and symptoms, Lyme disease, signs and symptoms. We also have one on the do's and don'ts of tick prevention, which is really important because there's a lot of misinformation out there on how to remove a tick. And we also have a brochure now that has all the medically important ticks in Delaware, what disease they're associated with. And yeah, if anyone wants any of those, feel free to reach out to the report disease at delaware.gov mailbox. And we could definitely set you up and send you some of these outreach products. And we actually have a lot of these printed too, so you wouldn't have to pay for printing or anything like that.
Very good to know.
Tony, can you tell us about your annual report and where we can find it and what the best takeaways are from that?
Yeah. So last year was our first published annual report on vector-borne diseases. And basically, it's a snapshot of what happened the previous year. So 2023 was our first year that we published it, or the first year that we published the data on. And then We just published one on 2024's data. And so it's a snapshot. It has a number of cases, incidence rates by county. It has some graphs that you can see what's going on as far as vector-borne diseases. We include DENREC Sentinel Chicken Program data in there as well. So DENREC sets chickens basically across the state and tests their blood weekly in the summer for West Nile virus and Eastern equine encephalitis antibodies, just to see where the disease is occurring in the state. So I have data on that. We also have data on travel associated mosquito-borne diseases like malaria and dengue and chikungunya. There's a lot of good takeaways from that. If you just want to know what's happening, what's the state of vector-borne diseases in Delaware, it's a good report to read. And I don't know if it's on the website yet. We have the final version. I did give it to our training team. And if you would like a copy of it, we can send you a electronic PDF if you want to email that reportdisease@delaware.gov email address as well.
What does that actually tell us for the average person? Why are we testing chicken's blood for these diseases?
Yeah. So it tells us basically presence or absence of the disease. And it also shows us like these mosquitoes are biting birds right now in that area that are infected with West Nile virus. So it can just tell us where these infected biting mosquitoes are found throughout the state. And based on those results, DENREC can focus and fine tune their surveillance or their mosquito control efforts. So if they're seeing a really high, a high number of chickens testing positive in Newcastle County at this certain week, they can really focus their control efforts at that area.
Very cool.
So a couple of years ago, I actually found a tick on one of my dogs, and it was like playing a game of Operation trying to get it off. Do you have any tips for pet owners if they happen to find a tick on their dog, or what they should look for when they bring them inside and do a tick check?
Yeah. It can be difficult to remove a tick on a dog for sure, because they often don't want you to remove the tick. It can hurt them sometimes, like it can cause some pain. So it can be difficult. You just want to do a basic pat down on your dog and just pet them. See if you can feel anything sort of sticking out of their skin. If you do find a tick, you want to use fine tip tweezers, and this goes for humans too, and get as close to the mouth parts as possible and just pull straight up with some steady, even pressure. You don't want to smother the tick. You don't want to put Vaseline or nail polish remover on it. I've heard I grew up with my parents telling me to do that. You don't want to do any of that because one, ticks, if you're trying to suffocate the tick, it's going to take a long time because they can hold their breath for quite some time. But two, it stresses the tick out. And when you stress a tick out, they're going to regurgitate a lot of their saliva into you. And that saliva is where these germs are found. So, you're increasing your risk for getting a tick-borne disease if you're going to stress the tick out. So you want to just get as close to the head as possible and pull straight up with tweezers. And dogs can actually get Lyme disease and some other tick-borne diseases as well. It's important to look for any symptoms if your dog's not acting normal after a few days to weeks after a tick bite, and to take it to your vet. They can order tests, and they can also provide some treatment.
Okay. On that same thread, you mentioned your flyer about do's and don'ts. And I know you started to get into that a little bit, but what are some do's and don'ts? Because I know I've definitely had one removed with a matchstick, which I know is big no fire, as we know now for DPH. But for the general population that might still be trying to burn ticks off and things like that, what is the proper way to get them off of your skin and then dispose of them?
Yep. Yeah. So definitely don't put fire to your skin at all. Don't smother the tick. Don't do anything that, like I said, that stresses the tick out, because that's going to cause it to regurgitate saliva into you. And that's going to put you at greater risk for a tick-borne disease. You want to just get as close to the skin as possible and pull straight up with tweezers. There are some cases where people will do that, but then the mouth parts get stuck in your skin. Usually it's like splinters. Your skin will usually, like if you can't get a splinter out, it'll eventually push it out itself. So that's not as big of a concern, but you do want to wash that area with some soap after you remove the tick as well. As far as do's, you want to stay in the center of trails if you're hiking. You don't want to go walk on like you don't want to go walk on the side of a trail with all the brush and leaves hanging off because that's where ticks like to hide. So ticks don't jump, ticks don't fly, they don't really fall from trees. They just they go to the end of a leaf or a stick or a branch or whatever and hold their two front legs out and wait for someone to brush by and they'll just grab on that way. So you want to stay on the center of the trail and not really brush up on any leaves or bushes or anything like that. Don't go into like heavily don't and you want to stay on the trail because you don't really want to go on like anywhere where there's a lot of leaf litter on the ground because that's where a lot of ticks like to lay, as well as places that are like have heavy leaf litter, places that are in like a meadow with a lot of grass, high grass. That's where they like to be. So definitely avoid those areas. You want to use insect repellents when you can. I'm sure everyone has heard of DEET or picaridin. There's some not there's some less known insect repellent ingredients like oil of lemon eucalyptus, and there's one that's like IR 3535, something like that. Those you always want to follow the product label, but those can be placed on your skin. There are some like permethrin that are only for treating clothing, so you don't want to put that directly on your skin. So just follow the label directions for that as well. So after going for a hike or going outside anywhere that might be prime tick habitat, you want to take your clothes off and put them in the dryer on high heat for a little bit, and also shower as soon as possible after coming inside. And while you're in the shower, it would be helpful to have like some sort of mirror to sort of see areas where to check for ticks and see areas where they might like to hide. So they like those like warm hidden spots like behind the knee or in the groin or in the armpit, behind the ear. Those are difficult to spot. So a mirror might be helpful in that case, and just really look all over for they can be decently large or they can be really, really tiny like a sesame seed. So it can be difficult to spot. And when we interview cases of tick-borne diseases, a lot of them don't actually ever recall even a tick bite. I mean, they recall going outside or gardening or going on a hike, but they never actually find the tick. So definitely it can be hard to find them.
I don't think I'm going to forget that ticks will regurgitate inside of you.
They're interesting creatures, and they have a lot of other components in their saliva too. So like, how it can be really hard to pull them out of your skin. They actually have a cementing agent in their saliva that really cements them into your skin as well. And that's just one way that they stay in your skin. Their mouth part also has like backward facing barbs, so it's hard to pull them out as well. So
Really, because the imagery that I'm taking away from this is the tick just waiting, just like the ends out, waiting to go. Yeah. So I think that was all of our questions about ticks and mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Before we have questions about One Health too, just in case we want to do like a second episode about it. But just as a wrap up for that section, what do you want people to take away from this podcast? And is there especially like one tip that if you remember nothing else, not ticks regurgitating, what is it? What should it be that you remember?
yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of tick-borne diseases that I didn't cover that do occur in Delaware that can be pretty serious. I know we touched on Lyme disease and alpha-gal syndrome, but there are a lot of other diseases as well. And everyone is at risk for a tick-borne disease. Like if you go into tick habitat, or go outside, everyone's at risk for these vector-borne diseases. And I guess people just should follow those proper steps that we talked about earlier, anything to reduce the risk of getting any of these vector-borne diseases. And as far as ticks, there's a common misconception that, ticks are only active during spring and summer, but unfortunately they're active year round as long as the temperature's above freezing. So, I mean, they're the most active in spring and summer, but as long as temperatures are above freezing, they're out there waiting for people to walk by. So just always be aware and conscious that it's always pretty much tick season here in Delaware for the most part.
Well, Antonio, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for teaching us about vector-borne diseases.
We are here today with Antonio Alvarado, epidemiologist for the Division of Public Health, and we are going to be talking a little bit about One Health Delaware today. Antonio, for the listeners and viewers who don't know what it is, could you please just give us a quick overview about One Health Delaware?
Yeah. So what the One Health paradigm is all about how the environment and humans and animals are all interconnected. So if you change one thing in one, like if you change something in the environment, it's going to cause a ripple effect and cause changes in the animal and human aspects as well. So one thing that I think of is deforestation. So when you're removing forests or going in there and disrupting that environment, you may disrupt animal habitats and place humans at greater risk for, or I guess a greater exposure to these animals and insects, which may cause an increase in some diseases. So that's just one quick glance at or glimpse at what One Health is. One Health Delaware is sort of the program that was established after, I want to say, like the Zika and Ebola epidemics or pandemic, I guess, outbreaks that occurred in 2014 and 2017. I don't know the exact dates, but it caused sort of Delaware, our division, to create this One Health team to sort of bring epidemiologists together, veterinarians, environmental, the Department of Agriculture, all of these departments to sort of meet regularly, talk about what we're seeing, and just to collaborate closer.
Yeah, so essentially breaking down some silos that existed to be able to serve Delawareans a little bit better and look out for these diseases and different changes that are happening in Delaware.
Exactly.
So, why is it so important to take that holistic approach, that One Health approach, in order to solve problems?
Yeah. Humans aren't, I guess, in in a silo, like you said. Like we're not, our health isn't just impacted by medical care and aging and all that stuff or food. It's impacted by animal health. It's impacted by environmental health. Certainly, we all know about climate change, how that's influencing a lot of different impacts on other animal populations, on humans. Where last year it was, I feel like we always had a heat wave here in Delaware and across the country. So, it's our health isn't in a silo. A lot of things are going to impact our health and we're going to impact a lot of other things like in the environment and the animal. So it's important to sort of have this mindset when you're developing outreach materials, when you're doing outreach, when you're like, for me in vector-borne diseases, when I'm seeing this increase in Lyme disease cases in humans, I'm curious to see if the same thing's happening in the canine population. And we have databases to look that up and just sort of seeing how our health is mirroring animal health as well.
As far as healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, what should healthcare professionals know about One Health Delaware?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it's just a good mindset for really everybody to have. You can always take something away from it. Yeah, so our One Health program instituted EpiChats, which are an open office hours for Delaware healthcare providers where you can drop in and ask the epidemiologist or another professional. Sometimes we have like tick biologists or mosquito control professionals. You can ask any question that you might have, and you could stay for the entire EpiChat, or you could just drop in, ask a single question, and then leave. And each month is a different topic. So the last month was on tick-borne diseases. So that's one really awesome project from our One Health program that we instituted. And it's not just for Delaware healthcare providers, it can be for veterinarians or anyone in the environmental realm as well.
Yeah, so speaking of those epi chats, what can providers do to sign up? And what are some of the topics coming up for the rest of the summer?
Yeah, we usually circulate a sign up link in our monthly infectious disease newsletter. The ones we've had so far are on travel related diseases, mosquito borne diseases, tick borne diseases, and rabies. So the next few there's probably going to be one on vaccine preventable diseases as well coming up.
So, Antonio, what would you want people to take away from learning about One Health?
Yeah. Just I would say introducing this mindset into everything you do. You could take something from it. Just looking at everything in the mindset that everything's connected, the environment, the animals, the people. You look at life a lot differently when you have that mindset. And yeah, I think that's pretty much important. Just trying to think about the One Health concept in your everyday life is important.
Definitely. And public health is everything.
Sure.
Is a quote that I know
Hmm.
we we hear here. So I think that's all of our questions, but in general, we just have some like random outro questions as well. So if you could bring one thing to a desert island, does not have to be vector related. We may use this question, we might not. So you could bring one thing to a desert island, does not have to be practical. What would you bring?
One thing to a desert island, man. What is this desert island? Does it have like, is it just barren or does it have like resources for me to survive?
Whatever you think. Like I said, it does not have to be practical.
Well, I think I'd bring honestly music, probably reggae music to have help the time pass, honestly. If I'm on this desert island, there's not much I can do, so I might as well just enjoy it. Pretend it's a vacation.
Very nice. Good way to look at it. Positive spin. What's your favorite artist that you would listen to there?
Oh man, probably Bob Marley. I'm a big reggae fan, so
Very cool.
How about, would you like to provide a question for our next guest? We don't know who it's
yeah.
going to be. It can be an off the wall silly question.
So
Have to
just
be doesn't have to be public health related.
yeah, does this I don't know if we have to cite our source there, but
Yeah.
I got that from a radio show. So any question.
Yeah, let's see. Um, yeah, what's your favorite insect? Let's do that question.
What's your favorite insect? I like it.
Antonio, thank you so much for being here with us today and teaching us about ticks and vector-borne diseases, mosquitoes, all that good stuff. And we hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Thank you so much, Antonio, for being here with us today and going over One Health and how that is so important for everyone, not just for providers, for all Delawareans to learn about, and a kind of little nugget of wisdom to take with us for all aspects of life. Thank you so much, and thank you for listening to DELAhealth.